The movie is set in Japan in the year 2030. Because of a sudden decline in the global oil production, prices of commodities have risen steeply, and the domestic unemployment rate is the worst since the end of World War II. In short, Japan is undergoing a hyper-recession period, which has brought turmoil all over the country. At the start of the movie, a news broadcast shows people protesting against the increasing prices in the country. People have been forced to leave their homes, as they don't have any source of income because of the rising unemployment. Meanwhile, at the Government Employment Office, we are introduced to the protagonist, Yumoto. Just like everyone else, Yumoto has also been badly impacted by the current crisis. He asks the job placement officer for a suitable job, but unfortunately, there isn't one. It turns out that this has been Yumoto's fourth visit to the office this week. As he argues with the officer for a job, the lights suddenly go out. This shows how critical the situation of the country has become. Later, a devastated Yumoto wanders around a park and stumbles across a statue of a peeing boy. The words "useless guy" have been scribbled on the statue, and seeing this, Yumoto relates it to himself. He then takes out a handkerchief and begins erasing the words. After he's cleaned up the whole statue, he gets a sudden urge to pee and rushes to find a bathroom. Meanwhile, the statue boy mysteriously pees a drop of dark substance from its wiener, as if Yumoto has summoned a genie. In the next scene, Yumoto finally finds a bathroom, but when he enters, he is disappointed to find that they're not in use anymore. Despite no one being around and the place still being a bathroom, he chooses not to pee, as the Japanese are very strict with their manners. However, when his urinary bladder reaches its limit, he forgets all of his ethics and goes to a nearby bush to relieve himself. There, he notices a fire and decides to extinguish it with his pee, claiming that it is dangerous for nature. Surprisingly, when he starts, instead of pee, a dark substance comes out of his manhood. As soon as the liquid touches the fire, it bursts into large flames, as if the liquid is combustible. Here, it is finally revealed that the peeing boy statue has rewarded Yumoto with a unique ability for his kindness. He can produce an unlimited amount of oil just by peeing. I haven't seen pee this valuable since Trump visited Russia. Startled by the strange incident, Yumoto immediately heads to a doctor to get examined. He provides a sample of his urine, and after inspecting it, the doctor is taken aback. Yumoto inquires if everything is fine, but the doctor simply asks him to wait and goes outside. After a while, he brings two men to the place and points them towards Yumoto. The men are from the National Research Institute, and they are there to escort Yumoto to their laboratory for research. Yumoto tries his best to convince them that he is a normal person and that he just wants to go home, but the men drag him to their van. On their way to the lab, Yumoto again gets a sudden urge to pee and requests one of the men for a break. This time, his request is granted, and the van stops near a secluded forest. Soon, Yumoto starts peeing on a tree, while the man keeps an eye on him. Just then, Yumoto notices that his pee is flowing in the direction of the man. At the same time, the man takes out a cigarette, and as he is about to light it, he accidentally drops his lighter. Unfortunately for him, the burning lighter falls directly into Yumoto's pee, causing a large fire. The man is covered in flames, and hearing his screams, his colleague rushes to help him. Yumoto is shocked to witness all this, but nonetheless, he takes advantage of the opening and makes a run for it. After running the whole night, Yumoto arrives at a small village the following morning and collapses to the ground. Just then, a village girl comes across his pitiful state and takes him home. When he regains consciousness, he finds an old man staring at him. Startled, Yumoto immediately gets up and inquires about the man's identity, and the latter replies that he is the mayor of the village. Meanwhile, the same girl who brought Yumoto to the place, Jiaoku, enters the room with some food. She is the mayor's assistant and is one of the most beautiful girls in the village. As soon as Yumoto sees the food, he starts devouring it, as he hasn't eaten in a whole day. Later, the mayor, along with his group, take Yumoto to the village fields, which have become completely barren. He explains that after the country started going through hyper-recession, the farmers couldn't afford oil, and thus, the farming tractors were no longer operable. Because of this, the village, which was once a very productive farming area, has now become deserted. Time for Yumoto to whip it out. The mayor also reveals that most of the youths in the village have fled to Tokyo for a better life, and now all that remains are old people and cattle. Hearing all this, Yumoto becomes sad. He remembers the saying, "With great power comes great responsibility," because he's a Spider-Man stan, and decides to test himself out. He excuses himself, picks up an empty bottle, and heads inside the nearby woods. As the mayor and Jiaoku watch in suspense, Yumoto starts peeing inside the bottle, and once again, he discharges oil. Seeing this, the mayor immediately covers Jiaoku's eyes. After Yumoto is done, he pours the collected oil into the tractor and starts the engine. Surprisingly, the tractor comes to life, leaving the mayor and his group stunned. Yumoto then bids goodbye to the group and prepares to leave. However, the mayor requests him to stay. In the next scene, Yumoto is taken to the village school, where he is offered a job. At first, he thinks that he will become a teacher, but when the mayor shows him his empty basement-like room, he becomes confused. Soon, the mayor introduces him to Sumiko, the school caretaker, who will now assist Yumoto in his job. The job is simple. All he has to do is drink a lot of water and urinate. Yumoto is initially skeptical about the job, but since he has nowhere else to go, he accepts. Next, we see an inspiring montage of Yumoto drinking water and filling several gallon jars with his pee. As he does his business, Sumiko notes down his performance and smiles like a proud teacher. By the end of the day, he has accumulated 30 jars of pee, prompting the mayor and his men to burst into applause. Yumoto is happy, as for the first time in his life, he has done something useful. Because of his heroics, the whole village comes back to life. The farmers start harvesting the crops in their fields, and public buses are in full operation. From one of the buses, 2 women come out and start talking about the miraculous discovery of oil in their village. They also talk about how their village is the only one to not suffer power outages. Yumoto, who has also come out of the same bus, overhears their conversation and smiles. "They can thank my balls for that," thinks Yumoto. Later, he returns to his office and starts his usual business. After a few hours, he completes his quota of 100 liters and decides to leave. But just then, the mayor arrives and orders him to produce more oil. By this time, greed has set into his mind, and he wants more oil for himself. Hearing this, Yumoto claims that he is already tired, but the mayor forces him to start peeing. In the evening, Yumoto meets with Jiaoku, and the two talk about their daily lives. When Yumoto reveals that he is working extra shifts, Jiaoku mentions that the mayor is cunning and that she doesn't like him. However, she says that Yumoto is doing a great job by helping the villagers. Meanwhile, at the school, a delegate from the National Research Institute, Shinji, arrives and confronts the mayor. He warns the old man to reveal whatever he is hiding, since the village has been producing a lot of oil lately. However, the mayor, who is unfazed by the threats, replies that he doesn't have anything to hide. With this, Shinji leaves, but not before promising to come back again. Elsewhere, as Yumoto and Sumiko go on their daily work, the power suddenly goes out. As a result, Yumoto decides to take a break and heads to explore the other rooms in the school. When Yumoto gets a little further, he notices a few drops of oil on the floor. Shocked, he follows the droplets and reaches a warehouse, which has several barrels of the oil stored in it. In the next scene, an enraged Yumoto confronts the mayor for his lies and demands answers. To his surprise, the mayor mentions that it's all business, and that he was just storing the oil to sell to other cities. I mean, yeah, what did Yumoto think he was doing? Hearing this, Yumoto becomes even more angry and decides to head down to the warehouse to retrieve the oil and distribute it amongst the villagers. However, before he can proceed, he is captured by the mayor's men. While being taken away, he is devastated to learn that Sumiko knew about the secret all along. Later, Yumoto is tied up in an isolated room and ordered to continue draining the sea dragon. When he refuses, the men attach a pipe to his manhood, hoping that his pee will get collected in a jar. They then warn him that if he holds his pee for too long, he might suffer from urinary tract infection. After the men leave, Yumoto tries his best to hold his pee, but with each passing minute, it becomes increasingly difficult. Soon, he reaches a point where he simply can't hold it in anymore. But Just then, Jiaoku arrives at the scene and rescues him. She then tells him that they must escape the place as soon as possible. Wasting no time, Yumoto gets up and the two run into the woods. After a while, the mayor and his men catch wind of the escape and immediately begin a search operation. Upon reaching the woods, he finds some oil in a tree and deduces that it must have come out of Yumoto. The mayor then provides the oil sample to his dog, who in turn starts tracking the runaway couple. Elsewhere, Yumoto and Jiaoku reach an abandoned house where they light a fire and start an awkward conversation. Jiaoku mentions that the villagers are completely dependent on Yumoto's pee and that they are willing to swallow it if that's the only way to preserve it. Hearing this, Yumoto becomes sad and he blames himself for bringing hope to the villagers. He then starts punching himself in the dick, hoping to destroy his oil tank. However, Jiaoku stops him and asks him to save the world with his pee. She also mentions that he is the chosen one, whose pee has the ability to change people's lives. The speech finally inspires Yumoto, and he agrees to stop bagging himself aggressively and instead use his pee for the betterment of humanity. Following this, the duo start making out. Don't get too excited, Yumoto. We don't know what's gonna come out of there. While they are busy, we see a drop of oil appearing out of nowhere and dropping into the fire. The next morning, as the couple is still asleep, the mayor and his men arrive at the place. They immediately wake the duo up and apprehend them. As they are about to leave, Shinji suddenly barges into the house with several armed officers. He then threatens the mayor to hand Yumoto over to him, but the latter refuses. The mayor then reveals that his plan was to produce large amounts of oil so that his village can become an independent country and he will become the king. On the other hand, Shinji mentions that the National Research Institute is after Yumoto as they want to research him and create several other oil-producing humans. If they succeed in this, they can sell the oil at a high price and rule the world. In other words, everyone is greedy for Yumoto's pee-pee. Meanwhile, Yumoto becomes disgusted after hearing the fantasies of both parties. Having had enough, he breaks free from his captors and tells everyone that oil is not there to make ugly fights with people. Instead, oil exists to make everyone happy. Saying this much, he picks up a burning stick from the fire and points it at Shinji. At first, Shinji is unbothered as he believes that Yumoto is fighting a failing battle. However, when the oil man whips it out, everyone in the room is terrified. They plead with him to stop, but Yumoto pees on the burning stick. Surprisingly, instead of exploding the place, the pee extinguishes the fire. Shocked, Yumoto tries one more time, but again, the same result. With this, he realizes that his superpowers have finally come to an end. Realizing the truth, the mayor and Shinji also decide to become friends, as there is nothing left to fight for. The scene then cuts forward several years, where Yumoto is still in the village, working as a counselor. He has married Jiaoku, and the couple has a son together. The movie ends as their infant son pees a mysterious liquid, which looks like a portal to another dimension. What? Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.